Okay, let me show you how to be porn-free. Not by using willpower, not by tracking clean days, not by relying on blockers or filters, and not by beating yourself up or thinking there's something wrong with you for still struggling. Even if you've already tried accountability partners, dopamine detoxes, deleting apps, watching every YouTube video on the topic, or distracting yourself with things like gym, music, or socializing every time an urge hits and still feel stuck. This can work for you. You don't need to muscle your way through urges. You just need to understand what's actually happening in your brain and how to retrain it. This is the full guide on how to get to the point where your desire to look at pornography or any type of erotic content drops significantly. And just so you know, this isn't theory for me. I lived a double life for 20 years. What changed everything wasn't more control or more discipline. It was learning how to regulate my emotions and retrain the pattern beneath the habit. A lot of advice out there just piles on shame-based motivation, and that's exactly the kind of counter effect that keeps people stuck in a loop of shame and relapse. The process you're gonna learn in this video is different. It helps you step out of all or nothing thinking and change how you handle porn urges, so you can move forward with clarity and control. A quick note before we begin. Many people believe they're addicted to porn, not because of how often they watch, but because of how they feel about it. I've seen people who only watch once a week still feel completely broken, not because of the behavior itself, but because of the meaning they attach to it. So you cannot label yourself as addicted based only on how much porn you watched last week, how many times you've relapsed over the years, how you feel, or what you think about yourself. I want you to know this. From all the people I've worked with, from all the messages I've received, and from all the research I've studied, most of the time what looks like addiction is actually a deep conflict between your values and your behavior. From a scientific standpoint, there is no official diagnosis called porn addiction. Researchers use terms like compulsive porn use or problematic porn use. The label addiction often adds shame and keeps people stuck. In many cases, the real issue is not the behavior, it's the internal conflict. That said, the habit can still feel massive. Maybe porn urges pull you away from time with your partner or kids, keep you up late when you promise yourself an early night, or break other commitments you care about. If that sounds familiar, you are in the right place. However, if you've been clinically diagnosed with sexual addiction, or if porn has severely disrupted your ability to function at work, school, or in relationships, this video may not be the right level of support. Please work with a licensed therapist or medical professional who can help you at a deeper clinical level. This video is for people who feel stuck, people who are tired of how the porn habit pulls them away from what matters most, and people who are ready to retrain the habit at its root. Alright, so in this video I'm going to cover 3 main topics. The main topics that I'm going to cover are why we desire it, why it's hard to cut back, and how to cut back. Okay, it's really important that we understand that our desire for porn is the issue. Okay? It's not how much we view porn, it's how much desire we have for it. And I'm going to talk about that a lot. I'm going to talk about why it's hard to cut back. And the answer is your brain makes it very hard to cut back, and the conditioning of your brain in our culture. And the third piece I'm going to give you is how to cut back. My advice to you is to watch this whole thing in its entirety so you understand how to unlearn the porn desire. When you're done with this video, you'll have a holistic understanding of what it takes to overcome the porn habit without shame-based motivation. filters, cold turkey approaches, willpower. And then you can start actually implementing everything. So watch the whole thing. Especially towards the end, there's a lot of resources that I want to give you and show you at the very end of this video to just help take the information and make it very easy to actually implement. So let me start with who I am. Just in case this is your first time seeing my work or watching one of my videos. My name is Gamaliel, and I'm someone who struggled with the porn habit for 20 years while living what looked like a successful life on the outside. For a long time, I thought I just needed more willpower, better filters, more discipline. I tried everything: accountability partners, dopamine detoxes, deleting apps, trying to stay clean. Nothing really worked. I kept ending up in the same cycle of urges, slipping, shame, trying harder, and slipping again. I didn't originally set out to create a system to quit porn. I was actually learning from my personal coach through an overeating program. That program taught me how to process emotional urges instead of avoiding or reacting to them. And it completely changed the way I thought about desire, self-control, and habit change. And something clicked. I started taking the exact same tools she used for food urges and applied them to my urges for porn. Not to fight the behavior, but to retrain how my brain responded to it. And I was shocked by how well it worked. The same way people lose their desire to overeat, I started to feel my desire to watch porn drop, and not just temporarily, but in a lasting way. I wasn't white-knuckling it. I wasn't suppressing. The urge just felt different. It had less power, and eventually it didn't show up at all. One of the things I learned is that you can't just stop watching porn. You can't just block it, quit cold turkey, or avoid your triggers forever. Because if the desire is still there, you'll always feel like you're fighting it, like you're stuck in a constant battle of deprivation. So this process I'm sharing with you today is not based on theory or more self-discipline. It came from me learning how to apply emotional regulation, mindset tool, and brain training in a way that actually worked for my own struggle. That's exactly why I built the process I'm sharing with you in this video. Okay, so first things first. Let's start with why we desire porn. It's such an important question. Most of us think about watching porn, and we put desire, we just chalk it up to everybody watches porn. But the truth is, not everybody likes it. And not everybody overlikes it like we do, right? If we watch more than we genuinely want to watch for overusing porn or any explicit content online, it means we desire it more than we want to desire it. Which doesn't really make sense in some ways, right? How can you desire something that you don't really desire? What that really means is part of you wants it, but a deeper part of you doesn't. That conflict comes from how you condition your brain to turn to porn whenever you feel bored, anxious, stressed, or tired. The urge gets stronger, even when your values say no. But it's exactly what we have done to ourselves by conditioning ourselves, by teaching ourselves to desire. So, desiring something is a learned thing. A lot of people think desire is something that is just intrinsic. It's just something that is a preference that we're just born with. But really, our desire for certain things is based on conditioning and familiarity. And when you take anything and teach it repeatedly, and offer a reward for it, that's when something becomes truly learned. And when something is truly learned, it passes from that prefrontal cortex back to our lower brain. 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3, 8 plus 9, right? Those we've memorized and practiced it so much that we don't actually have to do the math. The answer is unconscious, very similar to riding a bike. That's what desire is. So most of you are familiar with Pavlov's dogs, right? And so if you're not, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of Pavlov and his dogs because it's a really good demonstration of conditioning. I've studied classical conditioning and how it affects motivation, especially through a research article on the National Library of Medicine. And so one of the things that we learned was about Pavlov and his dogs. And Pavlov was actually a scientist that was studying dogs for their digestion process. He wasn't studying conditioning at all. But what he noticed and what he started to observe is that every time the women who were responsible for bringing the food to the dogs would come down the hall, the dogs would hear that sound and start drooling. Okay, so they had made this association. They had been conditioned to drool, desire the food before it even came to them. And this became an unconscious experience with these dogs, right? It was something because of repetition kept happening. And we're going to talk about that drool. I want you to associate that drool that those dogs have when it comes to food and that trigger of hearing those footsteps coming down. He later turned it into a bell. He would ring a bell, and that association would happen involuntarily and unconsciously. And that's a really important factor when it comes to understanding your desire and how it becomes automatic and conditioned. Okay, so I'm going to be referring back to him often. So ring the bell, even without the porn, the desire would start. When conditioning is repeated enough, it becomes unconscious. And then we feel like we're watching porn against our own will and we feel out of control. So if you imagine those dogs drooling almost against their own will, it's like this involuntary thing that's happening to them because of that association. That same thing happens to us. We become conditioned to associate certain cues, like being alone, bored, or stressed, with the expectation of porn. We have that learned association on the front end, and then we also have the reward conditioning that's reinforced by viewing. When we watch porn, there's a dopamine response in the brain that creates a reward signal. The more we repeat that loop, the stronger that reward pathway gets, and the more the drool is going to happen. So porn gives us a dopamine response, and it also does activity in the prefrontal cortex. And here's what I want you to know about that prefrontal, that front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. That is the part of your brain that makes you human. So unlike Pavlov's dogs, you get to think about what you think about. So if you're thinking about porn and that's causing you to have that urge response, that craving response, you can actually pay attention to what's going on in your brain. The trick is when you watch porn, you lose access, especially depending on how much time you spend or how intense the stimulation is. You lose that sharp access you normally have to the human part of your brain. It does the prefrontal cortex. So that's why so many of you, once you open one tab or click one video, find it really hard to stop. Because that human part of your brain, the part that makes long-term decisions, the part that remembers your values, is no longer fully online. It's been dulled. And that's really important because we're going to talk about how important it is to make sure that when you respond to a porn urge, you're using your prefrontal cortex, not letting the lower automatic part of your brain decide for you. And I'll explain more about that in a minute. So, porn and modern life, right? This has become such a struggle for so many of us. We've been caught up in the belief that watching porn is just something people do to take the edge off, something that's easy, private, and always available. Over time, it starts to feel like a regular part of daily life. You're stressed, you're tired, you're alone, and your brain goes straight to it. Some people even shift from other coping habits like overeating or overworking to porn, especially if they never learn how to deal with the emotions underneath. And here's the thing, it's not that we're unaware of the negative effects. Most of us do think about the long-term cost, how it's affecting our confidence, our energy, our relationships, and our goals. But the moment that urge shows up, it's like something else takes over. The desire kicks in fast, and because it's been repeated so many times, we don't even notice how automatic it's become. At some point, you stop and ask, when did this get so strong? If the idea of never watching porn again feels like a huge loss or sacrifice, that's a sign. It means the desire has moved beyond conscious choice. It's running on conditioning. So this is a really important point. If you really want porn after repeated use, you have a normal brain. A lot of the messaging out there says that if you want it too much, there's something wrong with you, that you're weak, that you're addicted, that you're broken. But the exact opposite is true. Because if your brain is functioning normally and it's been conditioned to associate porn with relief or stimulation, and then it gets rewarded with a dopamine signal, then it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Your brain is designed to build desire for whatever gives you dopamine. Not because dopamine creates pleasure, but because it tells your brain, that was worth chasing, do it again. Dopamine is the molecule of more. It fuels motivation, anticipation, and goal seeking. Eating, sex, food, pleasure, any kind of connection, kind of pleasure with another person, and any kind of accomplishment or ambition are all associated to dopamine. And your brain is built to seek more of it. Otherwise, you'd never take action. You wouldn't even get out of bed. So when you pair a concentrated stimulus, like internet porn, with a repeated dopamine response, your brain starts prioritizing it. That desire loop gets reinforced. Not because you have a poor mindset, not because you're morally weak or doing something unforgivable, not because you're cheating on your partner, not because you're betraying yourself, your partner, or God, but because your brain is working exactly the way it was built to work. And I know for many of you, this is a huge relief, right? This is knowing that you are normal, that your brain is working great, that you don't have anything wrong with you is really important first step for most of you. So desire comes from programmed beliefs. Let's talk about what some of those programmed beliefs are. It helps me take the edge off. It's relaxing. It relieves stress. It helps me fall asleep. That's a common one. Like after a long day, this feels like the only way to shut the brain off. It's better than cheating. For some people, this belief makes porn feel like a safer option. At least I'm not acting it out in real life. That can be a big rationalization, like as long as it stays on a screen, it's fine. Everyone does it. That's one we hear constantly. Like it's just a thing people do now, it being part of modern life. It's entertaining. Just one time, this time is okay, no harm. These beliefs normalize it in the moment. They make it seem casual. My urge is too strong. That one reinforces helplessness. It's like you're telling your brain you don't have a choice. It's boring not to watch now. I'll feel deprived. These come from the idea that cutting back means missing out, that life gets dull without it. Now, when you take all of those thought processes, and those thought processes drive you to watch porn, and then you get that dopamine hit, which is exactly what your brain was designed to do. You have created the perfect recipe for over-desiring something. Now, the reason why I say over-desiring, it is because the way that porn concentrates the response of dopamine in our brain is unnatural. So the dopamine we get from things like real-life connection or intimacy is very mild compared to the dopamine hit we get from something like pornography. The same is with sugar. So because you're getting such a concentrated hit of dopamine, it means that your receptors in your brain are getting artificially stimulated and creating a desire that's over and above what would be natural. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter that fuels desire, anticipation, and reward seeking. So it's really important to understand that what happens with porn and even with sugar and flour is that because you get such a concentrated hit of dopamine, and dopamine is the molecule that motivates you to pursue reward, you don't get a lot of lasting satisfaction from watching. If you think about this, when you finish watching porn, you're not like, oh, that was plenty, I'm totally satisfied, right? That doesn't happen for most of us. What happens is it perpetuates that desire. That desire is even more intense after the first video than it was before you even started watching. The other thing that happens when you put concentrated dopamine into your brain is those receptors for dopamine actually down-regulate. Your brain is overloaded with dopamine and it tries to adjust for it. So then you need even more porn to get that same dopamine hit, which of course perpetuates even more desire. So that truly is the reason why we want it so much. The way that we've evolved is this motivational triad. Our goal is to conserve energy, seek pleasure, and avoid pain. And those three things have kept us alive. Those three things have kept us evolving as a human species until now. Now we've gotten to the point where conserving energy, seeking pleasure, and avoiding pain is actually doing the opposite of what it had done before, right? You think about back in the day when we were cave people, conserving energy was really important. There wasn't a lot of food around. Seeking pleasure was really important. We needed to reproduce. We needed to find warmth. We needed to eat food and drink, right? And we needed to create tribes and connection. And we needed to avoid pain at all costs, right? And now with those same motivations and so much concentrated pleasure available and so much opportunity to conserve our energy, there is no need to go out there and expend our energy. Everything is delivered to us. We are creating the opposite effect of evolution, right? So what got us here is not going to get us there. And that's why we're seeing such a huge problem with compulsive porn use and overstimulation. So let's talk about an example. There's cocaine, which is one of those concentrated powders. If you look at the coca leaf, if you were to have just the plant leaf, that in and of itself is not going to be a problem. We've concentrated it down to cocaine, which creates an intense dopamine surge in the brain, which makes us over-desire it. Same with heroin, same with alcohol, same with ultra-processed food, and same with pornography. We've taken these things that naturally give us some dopamine that help us feel motivated to move forward, and we've concentrated them so intensely that our brain starts treating them as far more important than they really are, right? So if you think about it, sexual connection gives us a dopamine response. We're like, whoa, that matters, that's important. But when you concentrate that stimulation into endless novelty, clicks, tabs, and content, the brain starts treating that as if it's the most important thing. Your brain genuinely starts believing that porn is more important than real connection, more important than rest, more important than goals, more important than values. It's like your brain has been hijacked and all the quieter, more fulfilling sources of well-being get shoved to the side in favor of that next dopamine hit. The other thing that I want to mention here is that our brains, I think, have been taken advantage of by everyone who's trying to sell us something, right? They know if they can get us on that dopamine roller coaster, they have us for forever. If we want something and we get that desire hit, we're going to keep wanting it, keep going back. So all they have to do is condition our brain and then pair it with a dopamine response. And that's it. We're hooked. We're going to keep coming back. And that's exactly what happens with explicit online content or social media. They know how to trigger the brain. They know how to offer endless novelty, how to serve up algorithmic content that lines up perfectly with your urges and keeps the dopamine flowing. One of the things I didn't mention here is the rush we get from things like buying stuff too, right? Even making a purchase gives us a little dopamine hit. And that's how people get stuck in debt or compulsive spending. So it's not just porn, it's not just alcohol, it's not just food. It's anything that can be engineered to hijack the brain's reward system and train us to over-desire it. So that really is the reason why we desire something so much. Survival is no longer served by pursuing pleasure. In fact, in today's world, it can be the opposite. But what I want to offer you here is this. The reason why we desire porn, the reason why we over-desire it, is not because something's wrong with us. It's because our brains are working exactly as they were designed to. We've evolved to be motivated by dopamine, to seek rewards, pursue pleasure, and repeat anything that feels good. And porn is a perfect modern environment for triggering over-desire. It's concentrated, it's novel, it's always available. It delivers the reward instantly. So not only do we end up wanting it in a very intense way, but we also end up wanting it unconsciously. We've trained ourselves to desire it in our lower brain, the unconscious part that runs automatic behaviors. So it feels automatic. It feels like it just happens. That's why we desire it. Okay, that's your overview. A really solid foundation for understanding why the desire feels so strong. Now let's talk about why it's hard to cut back when we decide. So I want to explain to you why it's really difficult when you just say to yourself, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to watch porn anymore. Why it's not just that easy. And it's the same with food, right? Why isn't it easy to just say, I'm not going to have it? Here are the reasons. Conditioning is unconscious. It feels automatic. It seems out of our control. And the intense effort to quit, to cut it off, often strengthens the conditioning. So what happens is, we try to stop watching it. We try to white-knuckle our way through it. But we haven't dealt with the underlying desire. And that leaves us with an increase in that desire, right? If I don't learn how to process my desire for porn and I just try to stop watching, it actually makes the desire stronger, which is the exact opposite of what I want. What I want is to reduce the desire. So you can't just take away the porn and expect the desire to go down. The opposite happens. And that's what we keep trying to do, right? We try to remove the porn, block it, avoid it, cut it out, and hope that the desire will just go away. But it doesn't work that way. Willpower and struggle doesn't work because you can't outrun your own desire. You have to work on your desire for porn. You can't just remove it. And cognitive dissonance, which is holding two beliefs at the same time that don't agree with each other. So I'm sure that many of you can relate to this. You have this desire to watch, and then you also have the desire to cut back on your porn use, and they're in conflict with each other. So you decide you're going to stop watching it, but then you really want to watch more in the moment. That cognitive dissonance makes it very difficult to cut back, And if you aren't aware that you have cognitive dissonance, watching is always going to win because that desire is that ingrained neural pathway that you already have. The brain is good at it, right? The brain is good at watching porn. You have your trigger or your stimulus. For some of you, that's the time of day. For some of you, it's being alone. It's opening your laptop or picking up your phone. So you trigger your brain. Remember those Pavlovian dogs, right? For them, it was the bell ringing or hearing the footsteps coming down the hallway. Then you have the motivation and the urge. So you have the urge to watch. Then you watch. Then you get the dopamine hit and your brain is completely stoked, right? That is the process. And you rinse and repeat every single day, which just makes that patterning stronger and more unconscious. So when you try and interrupt that pattern, you have to be so intense with it. You have to pay such close attention that by the end of the day, you're completely depleted of energy and willpower to be able to overcome and manage that struggle. You have to interfere with an established wiring in the automatic brain. Your primitive brain is committed to this wiring because it associates it with survival due to dopamine. That's what I explained to you earlier. You have to unwire it by interrupting the wiring, okay? So at some point during that process, when you get that trigger, then you feel that urge and then you watch porn. You have to interrupt that process so you can change that neural pathway. They call it neuroplasticity, your ability to change your brain. Now, the brain doesn't like to change. Once it becomes efficient at something, it wants to stay efficient at it. It doesn't want to be interrupted. It's kind of like learning how to ride a bike backwards. It's very challenging once you've learned to ride it forward. Or if you switch the handlebars, right? It wants to keep doing what it's already been doing. And that makes it very difficult to change it. It's almost impossible to change your brain wiring with force or willpower. Old wiring with deep neural pathways will always have more staying power than any new thoughts. New pathways can only be established with repetition over and over and over and over again is what builds that new neural pathway. Okay, and old pathways can only be changed with neglect and extinction. Okay, so we have repetition and attention is what's going to create the new neural pathways. And all neural pathways can only be changed with neglect and extinction. The brain has become efficient at something it believes to be very important. It has delegated the cycle to the automatic brain. Remember, we have the prefrontal brain, and then we have that automatic brain that is no longer answering to the prefrontal. The better you are at using porn, the more tolerance you develop, and the more you want, and the more satisfied your lower brain is. It's become efficient. It's getting porn. It doesn't see it as wrong or bad. In fact, it sees it as very good. The more dopamine, the better. It's a primitive brain. Your prefrontal brain understands that this is not a good thing, that is causing negative consequences, that is not perpetuating well-being, right? But your lower brain is happy because it's getting its dopamine hit, and that's all it understands. So how did they stop the drooling in Pavlov's dogs? How did Pavlov do that? The way that he did that was with extinction. And that is the neural pathway that was associating that ringing bell, those shoes coming down the hallway with foot, had to be disconnected. And the exact same thing is true for us. The triggers that we have to watch porn need to be disconnected from the action of actually watching it. So the triggers that we have are our thinking, what we think about porn, which I covered earlier, and also the time of day we normally watch, the phone or laptop, the situations, the environments, the emotions we associate with it, the conditioning we've had to connect certain moods and certain circumstances with porn use. We have to separate those out and bring it back to the prefrontal cortex so we can make decisions from a human place and not from that primitive automatic place. So the way they did that with the dogs is they just rang the bell and didn't give them any food. Rang the bell, no food. And eventually they stopped drooling. They disassociated the bell and the clocks coming down the hallway from food. And the drooling stopped. And that's exactly what we need to do when it comes to porn. We need to send that neural pathway, the one that's become automatic, into a place of extinction so that we only watch or choose not to watch from that prefrontal place. So how do we stop the desire for porn with our own conditioning? We interrupt what I call a model, and I'm going to show you what that model is in a minute. When the urge is present, when you have the urge to watch porn, you don't offer it resistance. Because remember, if you offer that urge resistance, your desire and your urge will get more intense. You allow it to be there, and there is no answer. The urge extinguishes, just like the drool. So when you fully allow an urge to be there, when you allow the thoughts to be there without consuming porn, you extinguish the urge, just like they did with the bell. Ring the bell, you allow the bell to be there. You allow the stimulus to be there. You don't freak out about it. You don't resist it. You allow it to be there, but you don't watch, and you don't associate it with watching. There's no deprivation. There's no resistance. But there's also no porn. And we build up a new neural pathway that's associated with not watching. Now, this doesn't mean that the urge disappears forever. It just means that when it shows up, it no longer controls your action. The bell rings, but there's no response. And that's exactly how we treat our own brain psychologically when it comes to porn. The important distinction is that the dogs didn't resist wanting the food. They literally lost the association with it with no resistance or willpower required. Notice how the extinction of the drool didn't require the dogs to get tough. It didn't require them to struggle. It didn't require them to, draw a line in the sand. All it required from them is just to hear the bell and not react, hear the bell and not eat food, and eventually the drool went away. That's exact process that I use with myself and with all my clients when it comes to extinguishing the over-desire for porn. Another reason why it's so hard to quit porn is withdrawal. Now, I'm not talking about physical withdrawal from pornography. I'm not talking about the shakes or the kind of withdrawal that happens with substance abuse, but I'm talking about the emotional dopamine withdrawal to unanswered desire. I'm talking about the withdrawal from the solution to anxiety and restlessness. And I'm talking about the withdrawal from false pleasure. In my work, I do a lot of work on what I call buffering, where we basically take our lives and buffer it with false pleasures so we don't realize the truth about our life, right? We overeat, we overwatch, we overspend, we overwork. Whatever it is that we do to create false dopamine hits so we don't really face the truth of our lives. So I want to talk a little bit about when you have that dopamine withdrawal, when you have that withdrawal from that patterning. That makes it challenging, right? It makes it challenging to give up porn because there's that uncomfortable emotional feeling that comes up when the urge goes unanswered, and we don't want to have that feeling because we are conditioned to believe that we should feel pleasure all of the time. We should feel happy all of the time. And if we don't feel happy or we don't feel pleasure, something's gone terribly wrong. And we need to solve that by having a false pleasure, okay? So one of the reasons why it's difficult to cut back is because we have this withdrawal and we think that something's gone terribly wrong when it's there. The other reason is deprivation. Deprivation comes from the understanding that you're not as happy and content as you might have thought in certain circumstances, right? We think deprivation comes from not watching porn. But really what happens when we stop watching porn? We're left with the true deprivation of our life, what we're not providing to ourselves, and we've been hiding that by seeking this false pleasure. We buffer our lives with porn and food and shopping so we don't have to deal with what remains. I want you guys to think about that. I want you to think about your relationship with yourself. If you take away shopping, you take away food. And I'm talking about overeating food. You take away overworking, over-relationshiping, over-watching porn. What is left? If your answer is something dull or boring or sad or lonely, that's the real work of your life, right? That's your relationship with yourself. So really think about why you're turning to external things to solve your emotions instead of working internally to solve your emotions. Now the answer many of you might have is you just don't know how. You don't know how to solve your own emotions. You don't know how to take care of yourself emotionally. So I'm going to talk to you a lot about how to do that. We've been conditioned to watch porn. Unlearning something requires effort and consciousness, and it's easier to keep watching. But the consequences keep getting bigger. Here's the thing about porn. It just becomes more and more of a problem. And the reason why it becomes more of a problem is because the dopamine begets the dopamine begets the dopamine. So you may have been someone that could watch porn occasionally, no problem, 10 years ago. But now you're noticing you want it more than you ever have. And porn is messing with your life, relationships, self-worth, and time. It's okay for it to be a little bit hard. The reason why we're watching is because we don't want anything to be hard, right? But what I want to teach you is that hard can be really good, right? Hard can be something that makes you feel proud of yourself, that creates well-being, versus creating false pleasure. False pleasure which always gives you that negative consequence. Now let's talk about shame. Shame is what really keeps you stuck, and I want to walk you through exactly how this cycle works, because this is where everything keeps repeating again and again. But first, it's really important to understand the difference between shame and guilt, because they are not the same. And this makes all the difference. Guilt is when you feel bad about what you did. You realize, I shouldn't have done that. It's about the action. And actually, guilt can help you change because it's focused on fixing what happened. But shame is different. Shame makes it about you, not what you did, but who you are. Shame says, I am a failure. I am broken. There's something wrong with me. And when you feel that, it doesn't help you move forward. It makes you want to hide. So here's exactly how the shame cycle happens. First, you watch porn, and right after that, your mind doesn't just say you made a mistake. No, it goes straight to making it about you. You start thinking, there's something wrong with me, I'm disgusting, I'm broken. And when you think like that, shame takes over completely. Then, because you feel so bad about yourself, you avoid. You avoid talking about it. Sometimes you avoid praying because you feel too ashamed to face God. You avoid other people because you don't want anyone to know what you did. And most of all, you avoid yourself because sitting there along with those thoughts and feelings is just too uncomfortable. But avoiding it doesn't make it go away. It only makes it worse because the shame and negativity start to build up inside. The longer you avoid, the heavier and more unbearable it feels, until eventually it gets to a point where you can't take it anymore. At that point, you need relief, and the fastest way you know how to escape those painful feelings is to go right back to porn. Not because you deeply desire it, but because it helps you numb everything for a moment and get away from how bad you feel. And that's the cycle. You sleep and watch porn. You feel deep shame. You avoid. The emotions build up. You go back to porn to escape. Shame hits harder after. And the whole thing starts all over again. And this is exactly why quitting feels so impossible. Because it's not just about stopping porn itself. It's about breaking this shame cycle that keeps pulling you back every single time. Alright, so we've talked about why we desire it. We've talked about why it's hard to cut back. And now I'm going to give you some really practical ways to actually cut back. Okay, you must unlearn the desire to watch porn versus trying to use willpower to resist it. So if you've learned nothing else in this training, learn this. There's the desire to watch porn, right? And then there's the actual watching. If all you do is try and control the actual watching, your desire will just grow and it will always be a struggle. You have to focus on the desire, not on the watching, okay? Why are you over-desiring it? Now remember I told you. The reason why is because you condition yourself and programmed yourself, and it's in that lower brain automatically. You will learn a new skill of allowing urges and allowing emotions, not from a place of struggle, not from a place of resistance, but from a place of allowing without using porn. You'll engage your prefrontal cortex to overcome that automatic primitive brain that's driving you to watch more than you want. I like to say it drives you to watch against your own will, and you will develop emotional adulthood. And what I mean by emotional adulthood is you will be able to manage your emotions, be willing to feel any negative emotion, and have the skill and the ability to deal with that emotion without seeking some outside false pleasure. When you learn to manage your desire, remember, we're managing our desire. We're not managing our porn use. We're managing our desire for porn. So I want you to think about this. Have you ever been in a situation, just for an example, like scrolling through your phone in a public place under the sun, right? If someone handed you a device and opened a porn video right there, you would genuinely not want it. It's not hard for you to say no at that point. You're just like, no, I'm good, right? But if you're alone behind closed doors with no one around, you're going to be in a completely different position. You may want to say no, but you feel like you can't. You feel like you're wanting it against your own will because of your conditioning and because of that triggering, right? What I want to do is not teach you how to resist better. I don't want to teach you how to push the screen away better. What I want to do is teach you how to feel about porn when you're alone the same way you'd feel about it in that public setting. You just genuinely don't want it as much as you did before, okay? So once you learn how to decondition your brain, you can apply this same skill to many other areas of your life, to many other ways in your life that will serve you, right? Any habit that you have that you want to unlearn, you'll be able to apply this skill once I teach it to you to any other area of your life. So, number one, you have to learn how to allow an urge and feel a feeling without resistance or reaction. Most of us feel anxiety. We feel restless. We feel something coming on and we react to it, right? And we watch porn. Or we resist it long enough until we have to watch, okay? You have to learn how to just be present with it. It's not any problem. It's not gonna harm you. It's not gonna freak you out. You can be present with that emotion. I just recently had a moment like this. I was home alone, my mind wandered, and the urge came in fast. I could feel the restlessness. I could feel that familiar pull. And for a second, my brain said, just this once. But I didn't react, I didn't numb it, I didn't scramble to shut it down. I just stayed with it, let it be there. And guess what? I was okay. I didn't need to escape it. I didn't need to make it go away. It passed just like any other emotion. It's really important to allow yourself to be where you are. Allow yourself to experience the truth of your emotions. The second thing that you must learn how to do is make all decisions about how you respond to triggers with your prefrontal cortex. Now, your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is your human brain. So, there's two really powerful things we can do with our prefrontal. We make all of our decisions there. But we make decisions about the future, right? That's the most powerful asset we have. Is we can decide with our prefrontal brain what we want to do in the future, right? Most animals can't do that, and we can also decide to think about what we think about. So one of the things you want to make sure you're always doing with porn is deciding ahead of time how you will respond in certain situations. You never ever react to a trigger without a plan, because when the bell's ringing, when that trigger hits and you respond by watching porn, you're perpetuating that rule. You're reinforcing that conditioning. So the goal is not to resist harder. The goal is to interrupt that pattern by deciding ahead of time how you want to show up in that moment. What you think, what you feel, what you do when that urge appears. So the first thing we're going to do is manage our urges and allow those urges to be there. The second thing we're going to do is make all of our decisions with our prefrontal cortex ahead of time. We never let the primitive brain drive the action. You have to learn how to manage your thoughts around your porn use. Now, one of the things that I want to show you is called the self-coaching model. And what it demonstrates is that our thoughts create our feelings, which create our actions, which create our results. So if you look at that A line right there, that action line is where watching porn goes, okay? So every time you watch, it's because of a feeling. I call it an urge, right? You can call it desire. It's the same thing, right? So you have to start managing from that thought level, from that brain level, because you have a thought that creates a feeling that creates watching porn. Right now, it's unconscious. That's why you don't have any control of it. So you have to learn how to bring all of that thought programming, all of those thought triggers to your conscious mind and start thinking about what you're thinking about. Once you manage at the thought level, then you decrease the desire, which decreases the action of overwatching porn. The fourth thing, and if you do nothing else, do this one. Refuse to beat yourself up and start honoring your relationship with yourself. When you start telling yourself there's something wrong with you, you're a piece of crap, you're not doing anything right, that perpetuates watching porn. That causes more and more problems with wanting more and more porn, because you're creating an environment in your brain that is constantly seeking pleasure. And it wants false pleasure. It wants escape from the beatings. So the first thing you can do and really commit to doing is to not beat yourself up over anything that you do. There is absolutely no upside. You know that it hasn't worked, right? Getting mad at yourself for watching porn has never helped you stop your porn use long term. Maybe temporarily, but never long term. Because it defeats your relationship with yourself, which is the reason why you're watching porn in the first place. Mental programming is so important. Right now, your brain might be stuck in thoughts like, I can't stop, I always mess up, I feel stuck. These aren't just surface thoughts. They are mental patterns your brain has practiced over and over. And those thoughts are what create your current results. but you also have a future version of yourself, someone who doesn't struggle with porn anymore. That version of you lives with thoughts like, I know how to handle urges. I don't need to escape. I'm proud of how I live. I show up with confidence, purpose, and presence. However, you can't jump from your current thoughts to those future thoughts all at once. Because if you try to leap from I can't stop straight to I'm totally free, your brain won't believe you. It actually backfires. The thought feels fake and you feel even more stuck, like something's wrong with you for not believing it. That's where thought ladders come in. We build a ladder of believable thoughts, a mental ladder made of small, true steps that you can believe right now. Examples: it's okay to have urges. Maybe it's possible to change. I'm learning how to stop. I can make it through this emotional discomfort without reacting. I'm becoming someone who doesn't need porn. These thoughts might seem small, but they work because your brain believes them, and belief is what rewires your habits. This is how mental programming actually works. Not by forcing change, but by training your brain to think differently, one believable step at a time. Not by willpower, but by repetition. If you don't create this shift on purpose, your brain will keep defaulting to the old programming, the one that created the habit in the first place. So don't underestimate the power of one new thought. That's how you move from who you are now to who you want to become. One solid, believable step at a time. Now here's what I call the desire decision. You have to ask yourself, do you want to want porn? And this is a big one. I ask this to everyone I work with. They'll say, I still want it. I still desire it. I don't know if I want to give it up. And I'll ask them, if I could take away all of your desire for porn right now, would you want me to? Why or why not? Would your life be better if you didn't want it at all? Or do you still like desiring it? There's no right or wrong answer. But it's an important question to sit with because it helps you see that desire is a choice. You can decide what kind of desire you want to keep fueling. Is it worth it to keep desiring porn? If the urge disappeared completely, would that be a relief or a loss? I remember being in that space of, I want it, but I don't want to want it. That tension is so real. But at the time, I had no idea how to unlearn desire. I didn't know how to retrain my brain to not want something it had wanted for so long. Now that I've done the work, I can honestly say, I genuinely don't want it. It's like someone offering me something I just don't connect with anymore. It doesn't feel like deprivation. It feels like freedom. That doesn't mean I've lost my ability to choose. If I wanted to engage, I could. But I don't. Not because I'm forcing myself, but because I've changed what I value. And that's the most powerful place to be, when your desire aligns with your true self. Problematic porn use is an indicator of an unconscious life. And the reason why I'm saying that is because over-desire is an unconscious process. Over-porning comes from that unconscious process. Whenever you're creating consequences in your life that aren't pre-planned consequences, you're living an unconscious life. It dulls your prefrontal cortex. It dulls the part of you that makes you human, that makes you able to evolve at the higher level. The part of us that creates, the part of us that's able to think about our future and design things in a way that is beyond any other primitive animal. That's the part we do when we view porn. It's part of our automatic primitive patterning to consume against our own will. There's nothing wrong with you if you overporn. It means your brain is functioning and it has evolved properly. Overcoming it is the highest skill of involvement. So I feel like the work I've done to overcome porn use has evolved me beyond where I was emotionally before. I've learned that skill, and one of the things that it's done is it created this ability for me to be able to be in a space where there is no emotion that I'm not willing to feel. I'm not constantly afraid of feeling pain. I'm not constantly trying to escape my emotional life by eating or drinking or overworking or, cheating on my partner or anything like that. I'm really focused on being present with whatever emotion. I feel like I'm a badass. I can handle any emotion. Bring it on. And that's kind of the skill set that I want to teach you all up, because if you're willing to feel something, you won't need to consume porn anymore, right? You won't need to consume porn as much if you're willing to feel what happens when you don't view. But most of us can't tolerate that feeling that happens when we don't view porn. So we immediately consume, and most of us are trying so hard to resist our desire that we literally defeat ourselves. Okay, so those are the things you need to start doing if you want to stop turning to porn. So listen, I've shown you the strategy, and really you're at a crossroads. There's two things you can do. Number one, you can take everything I've shared here and apply it on your own. You can do that, and for some people that might work. Or number two, you can get my personal help and skip the decade plus of mistakes I made and save yourself the $5,000, $10,000 a year most people spend on one-on-one therapy. Inside my program, I'll guide you through every step of this process, not just with videos or worksheets, but with real one-on-one coaching, support, and connection directly from me. If you're tired of trying to piece it together alone, if you want someone in your corner who gets it and can walk with you through the urges, the doubts, the slip-ups, and the breakthroughs, that's what this is for. You don't have to do this alone anymore. And so I love to invite you to join me inside my Stop Overporning program. This is a hybrid program which combines self-paced online course and one-on-one coaching, where together we're actually going to focus on your thinking instead of just blocking porn. So you're not relying on filters, apps, or rules to stay clean. Learn how to process urges without using willpower, so cravings lose their pull and you stay grounded instead of white-knuckling your way through. Handle emotions like stress, boredom, loneliness, or even celebration in a way that feels healthy and empowering without needing porn to cope. Reconnect with your body and listen to what it's really telling you, so you choose what feels supportive instead of forced. Create true freedom by changing your identity at the root level, so you become someone who genuinely does not want porn anymore. So let's talk about what's in the program. You'll get lifetime access to 30 plus in-depth video lessons, $997 value, designed to transform how you think, feel, and respond to porn at the root level. These lessons will help you break the shame cycle, understand your brain's real wiring, and develop emotional skills that last. You'll learn how to observe urges without judgment, sit with discomfort without escaping, rebuild trust after setbacks, and rewire your identity. So quitting isn't just possible, it becomes who you are. On top of everything in the core program, you'll also get 9 powerful bonuses to accelerate your progress and support you every step of the way. These bonus trainings will help you build momentum fast, regulate your nervous system, heal emotional wounds, and navigate urges, shame, and sexuality with clarity and peace. You'll get practical tools for rewiring your brain, calming your body, and staying grounded, plus guidance on intimacy, motivation, and emotional healing when it matters most. Alright, I need to tell you about a bonus that's honestly a total game changer. You won't be left figuring this out on your own. With private access to me, You'll get a real-time voice or text support whenever you need it for emotional processing, quick check-ins, or on-the-spot coaching when things feel heavy. No groups, no waiting. Just personalized guidance in your pocket, so you never have to walk through this alone again. And so together, inside the program over the next few weeks, you're going to start feeling peaceful inside, with no secret shame or constant mental battles. You'll finally end the obsession and free up all that mental energy for things that actually matter in your life. You'll know how to handle any urge or emotion calmly, without turning to porn. You'll learn how to live in tune with your natural desires, without feeling deprived or needing willpower just to get through the day. You'll trust yourself around triggers, around people, in any situation. You'll start to feel confident and comfortable in your own body and in your relationships. And most of all, you'll know what it's like to be truly done with this struggle once and for all. If you're ready to change your life, there's going to be a link in the description of this video. I will reach out to you within about 24 business hours. We'll have a transparent conversation to see whether this program makes sense for you right now. You can ask anything. No pressure. If it feels like a good fit, you'll be able to lock in your special discounted rate, and we'll go from there.